Hey everyone, great to see you. It's another wonderful day in entrepreneur land, as I like to call it, and it's another great adventure that I get to take with each one of you. So, today we're going to continue on our conversation with respect to content creation tips and more, and going on some of what I call the essentials, the basics. And today we are going to really have a conversation around, make sure I have it here. What is content creation and why do you need it and what's some purposes around it? So I'll be able to answer those questions for you. So for those of you, if you have not already done so, please join us over in the Facebook community, Content Creation Tips and More. You can find us over at smallbizsociety.com. You just type that in, you'll find us in our Facebook group. Answer 3 simple questions, and then you will have access to me, these resources, and additional opportunities to grow your business using content marketing and creation strategies. And as well, I am Dr. Yam, your coach and a practitioner in this work as I run my own consulting firm, as well as help other aspiring and new entrepreneurs to take their biz dreams and make them a reality. Now, what we're going to do today, like I said, is we're going to answer a simple question. What is content creation and why is it important and what are some purposes around it? So we're going to take it from that aspect. If you haven't done so already, as I always start with every one of my sessions, bring out that journal of yours so that you can capture your notes. And for those of you who are listening or watching this in a recorded version, feel free always that you can ask your questions, post them right here inside of the thread, direct message me, email me, whatever works best for you. In fact, these are the places that you can stay in touch with me. I'm in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Alrighty. Now, let's get started with the question. And I keep everything on a real simplified version, and I have my own little definitions if you like. So you'll hear from others as well. So there's no hard rules. I think one of the great things about content marketing and content creation is there aren't any hard rules necessarily. I like to keep them simple so that you can get right into the work and not feel overwhelmed. Now, let's pull out my notes. Feel free also, if you haven't already done so, you can post your questions here inside of the group. I'll try my best to keep up with the comments. I'm by myself today, so bear with me. Now, let's get into it. So the first thing is about just a simple definition of what I like to call what is content creation. As we've already gone through in our prior sessions, which you can see in the threads and inside of the Facebook group under the videos, is we've talked already about what is content marketing and also about a content strategy. And once you've understood what are some of the things you really need to think about when it comes to your content strategy, then you can move into content creation. Oftentimes, what happens in most cases is that we fall victim to going straight into creation without a plan. And like I said, as the quote goes, if you don't care where you're going, then any map will get you there. Having a plan, a simple one, doesn't have to be extravagant, a 3-ring binder. It doesn't have to be all that, but you do need to have some key pieces in parts. So if you haven't listened to that particular session, please go back into our notes and you'll be able to find it. Now, my definition when I think about content curation is about the research and the assets that reflect relevant information your audience wants to know more about with purposeful intent. I know that was a mouthful, but I'm going to say it again because it really matters. Content creation, in my estimation, is about the research and the assets that you are going to create that reflect the relevant information that your audience, that target audience I've talked about many times, wants to know more about with purposeful intent. And I'm going to talk to you about the purpose in a second. And it also falls in line with our framework around social balance. If you haven't heard about that, I'm going to speak more on that a little bit later as well. And you can learn how you can become a part of that community. So when we think about creating, we're talking about things like your blog, social posts, the podcast, live streaming, master classes, email sequencing, an ebook, a checklist, and all those kind of lead magnet formations. All are products that are kind of chunks of the story that you keep telling and sharing with that intended audience. And you're using various creation tools. That in and of itself is a separate conversation. I'll be talking about the top 10 tools about creating on another session. So please look forward to that. Now, continuing on. So we should do everything with purpose. I think it's important. I know we're really busy as solopreneurs, freelancers, and coaches, as small business owners, or micro business owners. Small business owners, I like to say. And oftentimes we are in the do mode a lot, and rather than in the plan mode. But even with that, everything that you do should have a reason, should have a purpose around it. And so when we think about the purpose of your content, you really want to ask yourself a real simple question. As your brand, as your business identity, why do you produce the content that you're getting ready to produce? What is this purpose? So think about it for a second. I want you to write down and answer yourself the question. Why are you producing your content? What is its purpose? Write that down and answer that question for yourself. And hopefully you will come up with some answers that could fall similar to items that fall inside of our framework. And those are going to be a good, it should be a good length, hopefully. In what I call, so my list, I should say, kind of falls into what I call the power of 6. The power of 6 is also used in our social balance framework that we've talked about in a prior session, and you'll get access to that if you're members of the Content Creation Tips and More community. You will see it's still up there until it goes down. It will be going down, but it's up there right now with respect to how I break down the power of 6, and what we call the social balance framework. And then there's also the social media management piece with social balance as well. So here are what I call those power 6 components around why you should be, the purpose around you creating content. You're creating content to encourage your intended audience, keep them motivated. You're educating them because they need to, sharing of that information is a form of educating them. There's the engagement piece, again, part of where your brand awareness and the ability for you to make those connections with people in an authentic way is ways of engaging them. You also are looking at sharing your expertise. This is where you get to kind of show off and share with people why you are the expert that you claim to be, because you have work experience and living experiences that people can resonate with. You also want to entertain them. And you want to be able to, again, that collegiality, that connectedness, and show that you have a humanistic approach to things, and entertaining allows people to do it. Plus, it's also, again, another way for you to, as a form of engaging people in a different level. You also want to promote your brand, the offer, the sale that you have. Now, we certainly want to make sure it's not only that. You want to always thinking about it. How are you adding value to your customer base? And then educate. Oh, no, I had educate. Sorry. Elicit and educate. So there you go. So those are your 6. Encourage, educate, engage, your expertise, entertain, and elicit. So every piece of content that you produce must have a purpose. So I know I didn't say there are any heartfelt rules, but certainly that is at least a guiding practice, I'll call it. It should have a purpose. You just don't throw stuff out there into the universe. I mean, you can, but see how well it works for you. So you do want to make sure that each piece of content that you create, because number one, you're spending some time, and your time is your money. So you might as well make sure that it has some purpose around it. Your content should be working towards one or more of those marketing goals that you have as an overarching aspect of your business. And it should also be able to justify to anyone why you made the decision to write maybe a blog post, or you designed a lead magnet book or an infographic. It's all about understanding what any specific piece of content can do for your brand. You want to be able to justify its existence. And so if it falls into any one of those prior categories, you're in good space there. But it should have a purpose. And if it should fall into one of those six, as it relates to my framework. You may also want to ask at a deeper level, how can it work towards that marketing goal? Is it good enough to achieve that goal? Now we're talking about the quality of your content, right? Sometimes we're putting out content, but is it good quality? Quality over quantity is always going to be a good rule of thumb. Less is more in some cases. And I think this is also a good time to bring into point when we think about content creation. It's not about churning out as a factory information and pushing it out all the time. That's not good content creation. It should be quality, purposeful, relevant information that you're sharing with your intended audience in that ongoing conversation that you want to have. And does it need to take on a particular format in order for it to reach that particular goal? If your goal is to really, as new solopreneurs or freelancers or coaches, obviously you're working in the awareness zone a large part of the time. Not to say you won't go to the other parts when we talk about your buyer's journey, but certainly you're always going to be in awareness stage and recycling and coming through that phase in order to take people through that buyer's journey so that they get to know, like, and trust you. So your content you need to decide on what form will that content take in order for it to reach that marketing goal and in order for it to resonate properly with the intended audience. So as a business owner, as a solopreneur, it's going to be important for you that it's going to perform into that larger strategy for you to generate your revenue and be able to drive the awareness, make those sales, and also kind of contribute maybe to other channels. When we talk about channels as far as platforms and things, and where your audience is lying out. And that also will make a difference. Your format of the content that you're creating will make a difference in where it's landing. Remember, one of those questions we were asking ourselves when we think about a content strategy is, where are you having this conversation? And so if you're having this ongoing conversation in the form of content, is going to make a difference. That format, I should say. In a following coaching session, again, I'll speak to some tools that you'll get to when it comes to creating that relevant content. And we'll also be digging deeper inside of our upcoming Content Design Essentials course, where you're going to be able to learn those best practices about designing content that is going to experience an engagement that is going to be much higher and relevant, and also reaching your goals. And you'll have an opportunity to identify your content goals and how they're going to be aligned to your reader's buyer's journey, so that they can move along that path and advance themselves overall through a business goal, so that they can be a consumer of yours as well. Now, one of the other things I wanted to bring to your attention with respect to that is how you will, when it comes to that content creation, I should say, it is a process. And so when we think about content creation, we're thinking about a process where you're going to identify that topic that you're going to write about or draw about. You're also going to decide again, which formation that you want it to take, right? How will it land? What will it look like or sound like? And then the strategy as far as how you're going to kind of distribute it and put it out there so that it can actually get produced itself. So in addition to that, your process involves kind of a round of, you're going to do this in cycles. There's going to be some tweaking along the way, so you're always keeping that in mind. And that content, again, is going to take on many forms. Could be a blog post, could be a video, could be a tweet, could be an infographic, or just a few. There's tons of different ways that you'll be able to create content, but the process is what's critical, in the fact that it's not always as simple as just coming up with a brainstorming idea, because you want it to be intentional and purposeful. And how is it that you can build off of it? So always kind of think about, when I create this piece of content, how can I leverage it at the same time? And that's another piece of the pie, about wanting to have quality content so that you can leverage it and let it take on new forms, but not having to reinvent it all the time. So this is why the less is more for me idea works really well when it comes to content marketing. And also remember, as I stated before, when we're talking about content marketing and content creation, is that this is that slow churn, but that lasts much longer than a flash in the pan Facebook ad or Twitter ad. It comes, it goes, it bye-bye. Content marketing and content creation is about the slow churn that's always there and is always relevant, and that you can reuse it and people can come back to it. An ad, not so much so. And this is why spending the time and investing time in this aspect of your business methods, as far as marketing goes, this is one that I strive to help people to understand the benefits around it. Now, creating those contents is going to start with, again, in that process. So let's just think of the first one. So your first thing you're going to do, obviously, is an idea. And you want to think about what can help you, maybe even to generate the ideas for what type of content that you want to have. And this kind of also falls in the line of the researching. So there's different methods that you can apply to this that's going to help you to produce that potential content. So you can generate your content ideas using keyword searches. You can solicit from your existing customers. And of course, you want to always think about putting yourself in the brain, or in the head, or in the shoes of your target audience. You want to understand from a customer's perspective what those are. Sometimes this is one of the good places that does it. I don't spend as much time as I'd like, but Quora, Quora, is a great place to find out what's going on in your audience's head. Because people are out there asking questions. And if people are asking questions and there are more than one person asking the same question, then there's a need out there. And that's where you come in with the solution that you have for yourself. So that's a place where you can start to generate ideas for creating your content. And of course, just brainstorming with friends or in larger groups. And also, hey, there's nothing wrong with investigating or taking a little look-see over what the competition's doing. You got to know, so you know what you should be doing or not doing, because not always is everything that a competition person is doing is great. So keep that in mind. Once you've had kind of gone through that phase of ideas and how things like what you should be creating that content about, then you're able to go on to, then you can plan for that piece of content, meaning you're going to decide what format that content is going to take. And what we mean by that is, again, everyone, where you're going to be hanging out or where your people are hanging out will, in some cases, be a means of deciding how that piece of content needs to be created. So some of your ideas may be needing to be more visual in nature, whereas it could warrant a video or infographic, where other places it may not be so. It could just be simple text, like in a tweet, or again, a blog post or an article or an ebook will take a better format for that. You can get some insight in investigating those types of contents that are going to be relevant to your topic. Again, you can kind of see, and also just having a good mixture of them. Because if your audience is sitting in different places, then you want to make sure that you're always thinking about the learning preferences and styles of your audience. In a prior session, when we talked about writing your biz story, writing your biz story, I talked about the 3 learning styles, what we call the VAK, VAK. Your visual learners, your auditory learners, and your kinesthetic learners. Any of those are always something you want to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about the types of content that you want to create. Keep in mind about who your audience is and how they absorb information. It's always going to be correct. Now, that's not to say I know everybody's not going to be comfortable being in front of a camera, or they think that their voice isn't great, or they're not very creative and they don't do well when it comes to maybe visuals. And what I'm going to share with you is you're probably overthinking it way too much. And also, simple still works. It doesn't have to be extravagant for it to get your message across. So don't feel as if you have to spend tons of money and tons of time. At the end of the day, your customer, your intended audience simply wants to be informed, and they want to connect with somebody who they will feel comfortable knowing that, hey, this person knows what they're talking about. They have some social proof. And I feel as though I have a connection with them because you've been sharing your story with them, and you've also been taking them through that awareness, and then they can go to a consideration mode before they go there. So you're going to take them through that buyer's journey as you're taking them through your sales funnel. And those are other pieces of content creation and marketing we cover as well inside of the community. Once you have decided on now the idea, what are you going to talk about? You planning about how that content and that idea will take its formation. And then after that, you get to do the actual creating. Now, this is the fun stuff I love to be. I'm hanging out in my Canva, or I'm hanging out in my Trello, or I'm hanging out in my stencil, I'm hanging out in my WordPress, right? So there's different ways that you get to finally create the content. I know you figured out this whole thing was all about creating content, and you didn't even get to that, and we're already at step 3. Yeah, you just don't jump into content. You got to have a process. So this is where it is. So now you get to actually do the creation because you've formalized and you've created a purpose for that content to now exist, where you now have earned the opportunity to create the content. Now, at this point, for many of you, you're probably a pro at it. You're probably really good at going in and making and creating content, but still, you do want to set up a process even for that and creating really good content that's going to resonate really well. It's a process. It's not something that comes easy to everyone. I learn different things all the time about ways in which I can create that content in such a way that it's going to resonate with the people that I'm trying to serve. So if you're a writer, then you're good at writing. If you're great at videoing, then you're going to probably create better videos than somebody who's a better writer. But just kind of keep in mind that content creation is it's a living, breathing kind of a process. And so you'll notice that, like I said, it's not a hard, fast rule in what you're doing, but also keeping in mind that you do want to then, we'll talk about in the upcoming segment, is about your style and your voice and how that's going to kind of come into play as well. But once you've published, after you've done your creating, then you'll be able to publish, and then you'll be able to release it to the community and kind of see how it lands. And then you'll get to monitor that content as well. So having a good content strategy, and then coming through the process of how will you go about the creation of your content, coming up with a good idea, planning the format for that so that it's delivered to the intended audience that you want, and then actually creating the actual asset, the product itself, in whatever form that you feel will necessitate the intended outcome of connecting with your audience. And then you'll be able to monitor and measure those performances as you move forward as well. So that is basically what we think about when we're talking on content creation. Let me come back over here. I hope you found that to be helpful. I also wanted to just show with you, I did this little graph. Let's see if we can bring it up here for you. All right. I think that's all we have for today. So I hope you found this to be a helpful component about, again, what is content creation, that it has a purpose, that it has relevance, and that you have an approach in getting it done. I want to invite you all back over, like I said, to Content Creation Tips and More community. If you are not already members, we'd love to have you over there. And for those of you, if you have not already, and that's all we have for today. So listen, as we say in my business, let's get busy. Take care. Bye bye.